We're live. That was pretty darn. There's a button down there, Mark, and then
Hmm.
there's one up top. I pressed the one on the bottom, but I
Hmm.
can't see it because my mic is in the way.
Well, oh, okay. I didn't see the one down on the bottom. I didn't know there was a button down on the bottom. I just see the one on the top right.
Yeah, I went like that and looked because my microphone, and we're live, by the way. Welcome, everyone.
Don't call us child. We'll call you. Yeah, usually we're on Tuesday nights. Yesterday was my fault. I was running all day yesterday on like 2 hours sleep. It was just one of those nights. I got to tell you, man, I'm seriously thinking about going to the doc about this because here lately, my sleeping patterns have been just absolute trash. It is harder than heck to fall asleep. And it's not like, I need CPAP or anything like that. I just lay there and stare at, the edge of the bed and cannot fall asleep. Fall asleep at like 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning, then got to get up at, whatever time. And yesterday, I was just ragged out. I was just gone, by 3 in the afternoon, and I struggled to stay awake till 8:30. Um, and I had fallen asleep at 5 o'clock that morning and then got up at 8. So I was on about 2.5 hours sleep. And it was after 5 o'clock when I fell asleep because last time I looked at the clock, it was a little after 5. So I was just totally burnt. And I'm like, dude, I can't do this. I got to see if Eloy will postpone till tomorrow. So it was all my fault.
Yeah, I totally understand because I go through that as well. I think that you know
Mm.
there's a lot going on in terms of access to information and entertainment and all that, and I go down rabbit holes, and whenever I do, I find myself sometimes
Mm-hmm.
overdoing it, and
I,
then I screw up the timeline, and so I have to correct for that, and that happens. So we used to live in a world where once it got dark and you're watching Johnny Carson or I don't know later,
yeah.
what's his name, with the
Tom
face.
Schneider.
Well, no, I wasn't thinking. I was thinking Jay Leno. Um, in that era, you'd turn that on, you'd watch a couple of guests, and be, and you're done. But today,
Oh, I
we get
know.
to pick and choose, and that allows us to keep
Dude,
viewing. And all of a sudden, it's like 5 o'clock in the morning.
I remember when TV stations went off the air after the Carson show,
Dude, you're
after the
so
Tonight Show.
that's so
Dude,
ancient.
I remember when HBO came on at 5 in the evening and shut off at midnight.
Dude, that's like dude, that's like medieval.
Yeah,
Dude, were you running around with like the knights of Sir Lancelot?
pretty much.
When you opened your eyes and you looked out, was everything in black and white like TV? I
Pretty
I,
much.
I
I mean, I
remember
was
that
the
as well.
remote.
Well, we didn't have a remote in the house until way later, so I agree.
Yeah,
I
I was the turn that up, boy. You know, and dad had a bean bag that he kept next to his chair, and it wasn't big. It was oh, maybe about the size of a deck of cards. And if you sat down in front of the TV and you were in his way, he would pick up that bean bag and wonk right on the back of the head with it. Then to add insult to injury, you had to get up and take him the beanbag back and then move off to the side so you weren't in front of the TV.
damn. I um remember when it got late enough, eventually it would go to static, but it would play the national anthem,
Mm-hmm.
and then it would shut down for the night.
Mm-hmm.
And sometime in the 80s, in my reckoning, later 80s, whatever that other half of the 80s was, at what point I can't remember, another channel came online, which was on UHF, I think it
Mm-hmm.
was.
Yeah.
It might have been there before and I just didn't realize, or it might have just come online. But here it was called Channel 33,
Mm-hmm.
and they played like the Honeymooners,
Mm-hmm.
um, and all sorts of stuff like that, like
Yeah.
way late at night.
Yeah.
And I just stay up and watch that. It was like the best because when all the other channels went dark
Mm-hmm.
or static,
Mm-hmm.
I had this window of, and dude, one of the last thing I'll say and see what you say, but one of the beautiful feelings that I can actually almost reach out in the air and
Mm-hmm.
grab and hold on tight to, nostalgic like, is being there at night. Parents are in the other room. There's not a sound out in
Mm-hmm.
the streets, and you're watching the Honeymooners, this old timey thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so cozy, and it feels like this is this is a special little
Yep.
moment for just me here watching this. It was so freaking awesome.
Yep. We had two channels on UHF that did similar. We had Channel 44 that played all the old sitcoms, where you had the Honeymooners, you had My Little Margie, you had Our Miss Brooks, Dobie Gillis, all the old sitcoms. And then the Channel 36, also on UHF, they had came on at midnight. It was called Movies Till Dawn. And you had a couple of hosts, and they played old movies from the 30s, 40s, and 50s all night long until about 7 o'clock the next morning. And then they'd start their regular programming during the day. And in the summer, it was a big thing for my brother and I. We'd stay up all friggin' night long watching movies, real old stuff. I mean, um, and I can only remember a couple of movies I first got turned on to from that era. And I'm like 14, 15, something like that, 13, 14, 15. One movie was called It Grows on Trees, and it was about a lady who got two trees from, she was a massive gardener, and she got these two trees. She ordered them, and what came was something that was odd. This weren't the trees that she ordered, but she liked them. So she said, oh, what the heck? She'll go ahead and plant them. And she planted them in her yard, and they grew real fast. So, like a month later, these things were enormous. And there was a weird looking bloom, and a flower opened on the tree, and inside the flower was money. And as the flower blossomed, she pulled it out with a pair of tweezers, and it was a $5 bill. And on the other tree, it was had $5 bills too. And so suddenly she's trying to keep this all quiet and everything, but she's picking money off of the tree and stashing it away. And this thing, she's buying a new dress, and she's buying this and buying that. And where'd all this money coming from? Well, you know what they say. It doesn't grow on trees. Ha 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 ha. That kind of thing. I remember very little about the movie, but the ending, she found out that much like everything else that grows, it rots and turns brown. And so she's like, oh my God. And the news is talking about counterfeiters, and all this money is dissolving and all this other kind of crap. And she gets into her cookie jar in the kitchen, and it looks like old dried dead leaves. She's like, oh my God, oh no, oh no. And about that time, the nursery owner comes back and says, we have to have these trees back. She's like, you can't, they're my tree. No, they were sent to you by mistake. Then some dude from the government shows up, and they take them out and take them back to the nursery. But
That's
it was weird. It was weird, Oh yeah, it grows on trees. It was a fun movie.
What's it called?
It Grows on Trees.
Let me look it up real quick here.
It was a fun flick. So Oz says, wow,
Holy
Mark, you're
shit.
making me feel old because I remember those shows. Yeah.
I've got the movie here, and I'm gonna save it
Okay.
right now because that's
Is it on YouTube?
yep on
Okay.
you,
Cool.
and it's been watched 707,000 or 707 times.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Did you hear my first mathematical?
Yeah.
Did you hear my first math? Did
Yeah.
you see that was new math? I started with I started with new math, and then I went back to the old.
Cipher for us, Jethro. Do your times buys and gazintas.
You know what screwed me up? It was 707K, and I was trying to read that's like reading Roman something or other.
Yeah, man. Well, anyway.
That's
Let's
beautiful
see.
though. I like that. That does bring a cozy feeling. And there's something, I know I bring up these themes a lot, but there's something cozy about these black and white movies,
Yeah.
where it starts the story and it's just these families and these communities in a more wholesome, even though stuff like that might happen and this and that, but there's a feeling of, it's just a wonderful feeling,
Mhm.
of coziness. I like
And
that.
and that right there is one of the definitions of nostalgia. It is a cozy, homey, warm feeling of reliving something from an earlier time.
Yeah,
Something
something.
that reminds you of your childhood or an old place you used to live or old friends or old family or what have you. But I'm with you. I mean, my in the summertime we didn't have air conditioning, and I'm about seventh grade, so that's what, 12, 11, something like that, 12. And in the summertime it was so damn hot, the TV was real close to the sliding glass door out to our patio. My dad would open up the sliding glass door and he and I would lift up the TV and spin it around so it was actually out on the patio. And then my dad, my mom, and I would pick up the couch and take it out and put it on the patio a good, comfortable distance. And we'd sit out on the patio and watch TV because it was too hot to be in the damn house.
That's great.
And it was decent. It was still pretty clammy, but it was a hell of a lot cooler than being in the house.
Um, I've mentioned this one before, but and I think I've heard you explain that one too. It's a great family
Mm-hmm.
story. When I was very little, my neighborhood friends and I don't know where we got the notion, but we wanted to do we wanted to camp out, midnight camping. So
Mm-hmm.
I had a front yard, a pretty nice front and backyard, but the front yard. So I had a tent, a yellow tent, and we pitched it, and my friend came over, John, he came over, and I said, dude, let's bring in all the things we need. And we brought like stereo stuff, this, that. And I brought the TV from my room, which was a little carry on.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked for an extension cord. I don't know. My parents were, I told my parents, I don't remember the details, but I told them, oh, we're going to camp out. Remember, this is something that they're not, it's like, where's this guy? I wanted to camp out with my friend out there because it's a new wild experience. We're
Mm-hmm.
out in the wilderness, but it's in my front yard.
Yeah, the
Um,
great outdoors.
yeah, and so we did that. But I ran an extension cord,
Mm-hmm.
brought the TV out, and we had the TV there, and we slept. Do remember sleeping there that night, and remember that it was hot as hell.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it was like oh, and by the morning we were like oh yeah okay we were
I
not
had enough of that. Yeah.
yeah. So but the adventure spirit was there
Yeah.
as a little kid, that wild, crazy, do
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
I even have a picture where the tent is seen slightly in the background,
Yeah.
dilapidated just about there,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think I brought it down. Um, that was fun stuff.
My brother and I would spend summers up here with my grandparents from the time he was about 5, so I would have been 9. And if we were at my mother's parents' house, they had a camper. My brother and I would go sleep out there in the camper. And at my dad's parents' house, occasionally we would do the same thing. They had a big screened in porch, so the mosquitoes didn't attack you. We
That's
go get sleeping bags and sleep out on the back porch, which was cooler than heck. Because again, at the time, air conditioning was expensive, and the only I don't think I knew anybody growing up that had air conditioning.
we did,
And
but it was Florida,
yeah,
and
but
it was.
even then, it was still pretty pricey. I'm willing to bet you because it was nowhere near as cheap as it is today.
I would imagine, but once air conditioning got rolling,
Mm-hmm.
which was pre my like by the time I come
Yeah,
around, everything's air conditioned,
yeah,
and the theme was usually wall or window air
yeah,
conditioners,
mm-hmm.
and so we had that.
Yeah,
But Dad regulated it at 78 degrees
mm-hmm.
because in his era,
Yeah,
that would have been way more than you could expect.
yeah,
So 78 degrees, but for my tastes,
mm-hmm.
I go lower than that. Like once I this is just one of these little things just to mention it. All my life, it was drilled into me not to touch the AC. The temperature he set it at, all I had
Mm-hmm.
to do was turn it on, and every now and then I would like when he'd leave, I'd go up and I'd lower it, and
Mm-hmm.
sure enough, he'd make the rounds. He'd see the AC. He'd walk right up without telling me a word. He says, "Click." He puts it right back and he walks out. And so- and sometimes he would say, "Son, it's perfectly okay at the level that I'm setting it." I said, "Dad,
Mm-hmm.
it's hot." It's no. I was always wanting more cool,
Uh-huh.
and so once I became just me, let's
Mm-hmm.
say, after
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately things, life is life. One of the things that I started doing was, and I remember the first time, is I'd go and I'd lower it to where the hell I wanted to lower it.
Mm-hmm.
And and when I did so, I remember doing that and thinking, this ain't right, but I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you say that. I'm 63 years old and soon to be 64, and there are still a few things that running through the back of my mind what that I'm doing. I mean, Dad would have a shit fit if he saw me doing this. and
Oh
the thermostat is one of them. The dad was in control of the thermostat, and Dad was in control of the channel I watched.
yeah.
And that was all there was to it. I mean, Mom had shows she liked too, so he would flip it over to her shows too.
I don't want to get so, but I don't want to get somber or anything, but I
Mm-hmm.
do want to mention this one note
Mm-hmm.
because it just popped into my head. And what control do I have?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mean, I do have some, but I'm going to say it anyhow. Just um, my dad, in many ways, you know, he was stoic,
Mm-hmm.
very much stoic, like
Mm-hmm.
very, very much stoic. But
Yeah,
stoic doesn't mean that he doesn't please and take you to the comic book stores, take you to the movie, like
sure.
all that stuff. Everything has
Mm-hmm.
its appropriate era, or at least for me, as I was growing up. But he was stoic nonetheless. So when it came to like you know, he was a man's man, let's put it that way. So it was very very
Mm-hmm.
serious. And my mom was the opposite. uh, I never received excessive or even any type of praise, nor did I expect it. But I think in retrospect, some of it would have been good. And I don't think that that's fair to say out loud because it's not wholly true. But this is one thing that I remember, this stoicness. I was a different. But anyways, at the end, one of the very last things, if not almost the last thing he said, which I didn't expect, that he gifted me,
Mm-hmm.
was he said that, son, but he was like, which
Mm-hmm.
is not
Yeah.
good. And he said, you're a good son. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Because the stoicness.
Hmm.
Well, he might have said it stoically anyways in that respect, but
Hmm.
I felt like he was giving me a recognition, a gift, or whatever. Um, and I remember that this conversation triggered that thought.
Yeah.
It's a big deal for me.
Well, it as it should be, because my dad was not as stoic. And I've never met your father. I wouldn't know him. I have no way of knowing him. But from everything you've told me, I don't think my dad was as stern and as stoic as your dad was. But he was of the old school too, where you didn't really show your emotions unless you were mad. It was okay to show that you were mad,
That's true.
but anything else was like, no, you just kind of
Yeah,
keep it, you know,
yeah, button
bottled
down.
up. He was never abusive or anything like that. Yeah, I got spanked and I deserved every spanking I got. But um, when I graduated from basic training and got through school, he pulled me aside, said, "Let's go get a cup of coffee." I said, "Okay." So we went down to local donut shop, and on the way back, he had something on his mind and I didn't know what it was. We got our coffee, we just kind of BS'd about stuff. And on the way back, he told me he was proud of me for doing what I'd done, proud of me for sticking with it and making it through. And that hit kind of the same way
Yeah,
because, I mean, he was, if I came home with a great report card, he was like, good, all right, terrific. You know, if I did something well, he was there with praise. Hey, you did that real good. But just on a daily basis, I had never heard that in his voice, and I'd never heard that. He'd never said that before. But for him to say he was proud of me, that
yeah,
did something here too. So I know exactly what you mean.
yeah. I mean, it was almost it was almost like it was an unexpected,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the condition that he was at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it just one of those things, you know.
Well,
So there's a lot of because growing up, I was also if I think I was always roughly questioning
mm-hmm.
everything
Yeah.
and asking questions all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't, and I still, I mean, I guess it's kind of different now, but like music helped because what I did with music was I got lost in that world.
Mm-hmm.
But this DNA stuff and this ancestry
Mm-hmm.
research stuff,
I told you it would take over your life, man.
well, but that the the point of focusing on this is that it opened or returned a way of processing when you're doing music,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of calmed it because when you question everything or a lot of stuff or you have just that thing, um, it's pretty. It can get pretty wild
Mm-hmm.
because you can question a lot of stuff and you have to control that. But when you go do music, you get involved in how does music work, how do you correct, and so you get focused on that, and that's what. So I had this timeline of like just focusing on art,
Mm-hmm.
and I became obsessive with the art. But when this whole genealogy thing comes up, which Steve, and you did say that it would take over your life. It's true. But when this genealogy thing, um, you have to organize things, and they have to fit. You
Mm-hmm.
can't willy nilly just because of preference. And once I started doing that, if you in the beginning, I wasn't very. I'd write the name, but I'd leave stuff out. I'd write the
Mm-hmm.
description, but I'd leave stuff out. But then I said, no, I got to write this right
Mm-hmm.
because anybody reading this,
Yeah.
the point is not there. I'm just willy nilly. And so I started, and that opened up this door that I had from before. And dude, it's freaking
Questioning everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve says, I tried to warn you. We both did, Steve. We both did. Because
The,
I remember the previous 20 years of my father and I doing this. You know?
the problem. So one thing is the discipline itself of
Hmm.
genealogy, but another thing is if you read about your ancestor as they're in Oklahoma,
Hmm.
um, then you get the notion that well he was in Oklahoma 1840 something like that, and then you think well wait a second, I'm looking for these documents, but what all else was going on in 1847 in Oklahoma, and and what was the fauna or what was the potential, just you start to sort of, and then you start looking for these things, and these things lead to other things, and then all of a sudden you're like reading about chipmunks in the northern reaches of Canada or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm that way with YouTube. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'll want to look up a specific thing. And the most dangerous thing for me, I'll get into that specific thing and I'll watch a couple videos on it. But the most dangerous thing for me is that suggested panel off on the right, because then it becomes a massive game of squirrel. And so I want to know about the volcanoes here in the Pacific Northwest. And 7 hours later, I'm watching I'm 25 minutes into a 45-minute documentary about giraffes in Africa. And it's like, how the hell did I get here? And I can't retrace my steps. How the hell did I end up here? You know, I can't logically think of that.
It's a wonderful, so it's a wonderful thing because all we have, I don't want to say all we have, but what we do have is this
Mhm.
thing that we have, our mind,
Mhm.
that processes information out there. But not only not only is there the out there, like I don't know my walls and my lighting and this and that. Like anything I look at is a category on its own, obviously.
Mhm.
But then there's the inner stuff
Mhm.
that's collating all these things, and there's all this going on, and what's in this is all we have to transcribe or transpose
Mhm.
what's going on outside of us and internally. And so it's a wonderful thing, this technology that we have that allows us to reach out and grab the things that we're interested in. But is it, I don't want to say chicken or egg, but that's the best thing I can grab at right now. Is it a chicken or egg thing? So, in other words, minus all that we have access to based on we're living in 2025 right now, back in the day, people were as curious as anything. It's just that in order to attain this or that they wanted, or even that thing that you're saying where there's a window that's all these options we have now were unavailable. People were still curious. Obviously, we didn't get here
Uh-huh.
out of nowhere. Um, but it's just so much more readily at hand.
Well, it's a lot easier. It's a lot
Yeah,
easier to get the information.
yeah,
But if you were really interested in something, like you could still do all the genealogy that you're doing now. You could do it back then. It's just you had to go there. You couldn't just get online and look for a document. You had to go there. And if you wanted to learn about some molecule, you had to go to the library and look it up.
yeah,
You know, I became real good with the Dewey Decimal System, man. Looking it up in that card file, writing down numbers on the scratch paper and everything, and going and tracking down the book, and sit down at the table and have books open all over the damn place and say, collating what I read in this over here, and then adding it to this over here. And okay. And the old fashioned kind of research, not just typing it into Google, you know.
yeah.
So it, but then again, that leads into another discussion about, are we using the technology or is the technology using us? Technology is great to have and it's great to use, but just like anything else, you can go too deep And you have to wonder, at what point do you have to stop relying on the technology? Now, you and I were having a discussion backstage talking about AI and what have you, which we still talk about quite a bit. And we have talked about before on this uh, here on the podcast. But if you, it's okay for a springboard. It's okay to get your feet wet. But if you rely on it totally, you're really taking a risk, because it goes back to the age old thing about garbage in, garbage out. And I've told you stories about people looking up recipes and relying on AI for these recipes. And you read the recipe and it's telling you to add a quarter cup of gasoline. Well, it's like nobody's going to add a quarter cup of gasoline. So what else is right on this? You know? So to rely solely on AI, I think we're making a huge mistake. There has to be a line, there has to be a limit. You have to know when not to rely on the technology.
Yeah, I was making an example about using AI, like with the computer that you sent me through your buddy,
Hmm.
which I'm very grateful for, and it's been very useful for me. This new Windows
Hmm.
has a program called Copilot, and
Hmm.
Copilot is, I guess, basically Windows AI,
Hmm. It's Microsoft's AI. Yeah.
and I like it. I've been using it, asking it questions, and so, but the thing is that the questions that I ask it, you need to have. It's this is kind of the conversation. You need to have a conscious mind to ask it questions, and it's basically your card catalog,
Hmm.
um, a library catalog, and repository of information. But once you're given an answer to a question, for my, and I think it's as universal as possible, I believe, or it should be. Let's put it that way. It should be. For my taste, and I think there couldn't be any other way to do it, you have to, when you publicly write something, you have to source what you're pulling from. You can get lazy or be nonchalant, but if you insist on being lazy, nonchalant, and not sourcing what the hell you're saying, and you're trying to be a serious person about whatever the hell you're saying,
Hmm.
um, any old person can just like say, well, dude, and by the way, and if you're sourcing it, you're not sourcing it, and you're trade and you're passing it off as if you're the one that came
Hmm.
up with that. Um, you're not being honest with yourself,
Well,
you know.
not only that, but even if you're just looking for your own education, it isn't 100% correct. Case in point, I was looking up something the other day. Google has this new thing where a lot of times, if you put in a search, like um, Google has built in calculators that are real handy for me. So if I read that something is 43 centimeters long, I'll just open up a window and type in the address bar there 43 centimeters in inches, and boom, it pops right up. Here's the answer. It's however many inches. Okay, cool. But I would put in something like how to change the headlights in a 2002 Dodge Dakota, not the bulb, the whole headlight assembly. And generally speaking, a page from a technical manual would be one of the search results, and I'd go to it and I'd check it out. Well, now if you type in something like that, Google has an AI that'll list a bunch of instructions. And I was looking for something the other day in the CNC software program that I use, and I couldn't find the answer in the manual for it or in the help file. So I did a Google search thinking maybe somebody else had asked this question and it would have a couple of references. And Google's AI came up and it said, do this, do this, do this, and then click this setting. That setting doesn't exist. So there was incorrect information in its list of instructions. But if you didn't know that, you would just take it, oh, okay, take that as writ. Then that's how you do it. You do this, that, the other, then click this. Well, that click this doesn't exist.
So you have to basically check what
Yes.
it is. On top of the fact that it's giving you all this, you have to actually check that
Mhm.
what you're getting is actually
Yeah,
true. So
exactly.
it's helping in that it's bringing you these options, but you have to verify them.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it turns out I went through that list of instructions and I kind of, okay, let's see what this is. And I followed and followed, and I got to that one point where it said to click this, that it doesn't exist. I searched for it and did various other searches for it. Turns out that that instruction pertains to another software package. And what I was attempting to do was done in a completely different manner. So even the first instructions they gave me that are listed right there, that I could follow and go to this window and click on that and click on that and click on this, that was all there, but it had absolutely nothing to do with what I wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah.
So it got 2 or 3 different software packages confused and gave me a list of instructions that didn't accomplish anything.
Let me attach to that, which is completely applicable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the it's actually what I'm about to say. Basically, the same thing that you've mentioned in the past. When it comes to one of your Lindsays
Mm-hmm.
having two versions of them either going straight out west or taking a detour into the Mexican frontier and
Mm-hmm.
getting lost there and all sorts of things, and you searching out or it being based on the data, and you searching out finding that that route wasn't exactly it, and this, that, and the other.
It wasn't true. Yeah.
And it's also what I'm about to say is also with what else you've also said in the past, where this one I don't have the details clear, but you'll know exactly what it is when I say it. But where a person that has a certain name was published on Wikipedia as having done a certain thing or being in a certain spot,
Mm-hmm.
and then it turns out that he wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
a massive case of circular reporting. And this kind of dovetails back in with the guy that invented the electric toaster that we talked about earlier, that fraud. Um, it was he, the guy, the comedian is a British comedian by the name of Dave Gorman. And he looked himself up. Just basically, somebody asked him when he performed at this theater, and he couldn't remember what year it was. So he looked himself up to see if there was a reference to that
This is this one,
performance.
right? The one that I was mentioning.
Yes, yes. Okay. And as he's reading on Wikipedia, it says that he took a year off from stand-up comedy to do a sponsored trip where he basically hitchhiked around the Pacific Rim countries. And he had never done that. And so he tweeted about it, and a few of his followers said, yeah, I saw that story here and I saw that story there. And he finally found the original source, and it was in this newspaper with a very low circulation. And so he got a hold of them, and they printed a retraction, said, no, we reported this, and it turns out it's not true.
It's an error.
Right. And one of his followers on Twitter said, yeah, don't worry about it. It's gone now. So he went back and looked at Wikipedia, and sure enough, it was gone. Well, about 3 days later, his wife comes back and says, "Oh, that thing about the Pacific Rim countries is back." So he went and he looked, and sure enough, it was back. And this time they had a source. The source was that original newspaper article. So you have a lie chasing a lie chasing a lie.
Okay.
And they had to come up with a name for it. They call that circular reporting.
Okay. So now to that's exactly the story. So those two are examples of what I'm about to tell you, which I
Mhm.
probably mentioned before. In many instances, what happens with online science connoisseurs, let's call them, where they want a certain outcome to their argument about, it
Whatever.
could be anything about DNA, it could be anything about the ancient Israelites or Egyptians or any number of things.
Hmm.
And what they'll do is that they'll pick out a study
Hmm.
or IQ, even with the people that are into like IQ and, oh, this group isn't
Hmm.
that smart, but this group is, and I happen to be in the group that's smart for some
Hmm.
reason. It always pans out that way, like that kind of thing. Um, it's just so many stupid people out there. I mean, not stupid per se, stupid, but
Oh,
bull crap artist type people. Um, so there's so many. It's so. I mean, we're chock full of it. We're up to our freaking necks. Um, it just it's unbelievable. In
hmm.
any event, because I'm thinking of all these things popping up in my head. Um, so what they'll do is they'll take one article, just like the examples that I brought up that you had given,
Hmm.
um, and then they'll hinge their thing on that, but they'll ignore all the other stuff that's
Hmm.
available that
Cherry
says
picking.
no. And so in the science community, they'll use that to say things like ridiculous things like I'll just be generic. Whatever the current consensus status thing, it doesn't have to
Hmm.
be true, but you
Hmm.
have to admit at the very least that this is the consensus status.
Hmm.
Like you don't have to say, you can say, well, the consensus is that eggs roll downhill leaning to one side and
Yeah.
whatever. You have to at least say this is the consensus, but my theory based on X, Y, and Z is the following.
Hmm.
At least you laid out the grounds that you're not a freaking biased freaking hack,
Yeah.
and you're saying, look, I know that there's these options out there, but for you to come out authoritative,
And say it
oh,
as declare it as a fact. Yeah.
declarative as a fact, with that arrogance. Now there's issues where, or there's scenarios where you have the facts
Hmm.
according to what you do know, but you're ignorant of what you don't know that could change that. Like
Hmm.
you could be in error, let's say, but
Hmm.
you're operating transparently as much as possible. That's excusable.
Hmm.
People are bound to make mistakes, but you're on the up and up. But if you are using stuff to manipulate in order to arrive at an outcome based on the egg produced in Nova Scotia compared to the eggs produced in Ecuador, have a yellowish tint to it based on the dodo bird flying north for the winter, I don't know. The,
Yeah.
the, 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 the point is to be transparent.
Yeah. And try to be factual anyway. You know, but
Right.
but now that gets back into the AI, because with AI feeding people bad information,
See, but is
it's
it,
going to propagate that much quicker.
let me bring in a side example with the co-pilot. When I have when I've asked co-pilot some. It's funny how co-pilot works. I like it because it says, I'll ask it a question. It'll say, "Oh," like it'll say, it's very interesting that you're interested in that topic." And then like it'll answer you, and then it'll say, what 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 thoughts created this questioning line of
Hmm.
questioning for you? Would you like to share? Like it'll like all that. So it's like, oh well, great job. Why did you
Well,
ask that? It's got
what it's
that.
trying to do is collect more information on why you wanted to know about that.
No.
because it's going to take that and add it to the data set, because it's going to turn around and feed other people stuff like that. Well, if you're interested in this, you must therefore be interested in that.
Well, that's not. Well, funny enough that you
Mhm.
say that. Funny enough that you say that. I asked it that.
Mm-hmm.
Because so I asked that first evening where you were giving me the instructions on how everything worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh, tell me about the Lindsay family," and it came up with all the stuff of your Lindsay family.
Mm-hmm.
And then I asked about the Escojedo family, and it basically rerouted, like it gave me the answer that I had researched and put out on the
Yeah.
internet. So I was the source for my
Mm-hmm.
family.
Yeah.
Um,
That was cool. I remember that. It was hilarious. As the look at the source, and you read down the bottom. That's me. Yeah, that's you.
yeah, it's like so in any event, um, later
Mm-hmm.
I went back and asked it about my family again, and it started listening. I said, "What else can you tell me about it?"
Mm-hmm.
And it started expanding and stuff. Then I said, "Tell me about Diego Millon Escojedo Mier."
Mm-hmm.
And it wrote this thing that wasn't true.
Mm-hmm.
It was filling in the blanks of what it couldn't find.
Yeah.
And then I wrote it to it. I said, I wrote, "There's a correction that needs to be made.
Mm-hmm.
These are the facts pertaining to Diego Millon Escojedo Mier, uh, my second great grandfather." And it said, "Oh, thank you." And then it said, and then it reorganized what I had. And I said, "Oh, and by the way, his wife, my second great grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
was Balbina Salmon Escajedo." Oh, and then I told, but I found myself, so I was writing my freaking family biography to it
Mm-hmm.
because I have all the information, and it was saying thank you, and this, what else would you like to know? And then I said, wait a second, this that you just said now
Mm-hmm.
about it's collecting data in order for it to later be used. So I asked it, will this information that these corrections that I've offered be be accessible the next time anybody asks about these people? And it replied that no. It said, we do not store, it said, we do not store information. This is during this session, because I asked, once this session
Mm-hmm.
over, if somebody comes up and types the same thing, and said no. Now here's the thing about no. Here's the thing about no. Or I'm sorry, here's the thing about no, it saying no.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? Is it lying? And if it's lying, if that's true,
Mm-hmm.
fine. So it doesn't collect, but it's got to collect from somewhere. If it's lying, we've got a problem, because, like, in other words, if it's saying that no, we don't collect, but they are, then we got a problem, because if they're lying about that, like, a human being has scruples on a sliding scale.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find a liar, and you can find a person that gets very uncomfortable with lying, and there's variation. But a
Sure.
computer, if it lies about that, it can lie about anything. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
do you call these things? Sources are about. But what do you think about that? What do you think about that?
I'm sitting here trying to think of a way that you can find out for yourself, because obviously, if you go in tomorrow and you ask the same questions, tell me about this person, it has taken your input. Now, it says it doesn't collect that data,
That's what it told me.
but who's to say it didn't store that data on your computer?
No,
Hold on. So if you go back tomorrow and you ask about that person again, are you going to get the same story that it made up the first time, or are you going to get your corrections?
no. I asked it, like, I'm really,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
I don't stop. You know that. Like, I'll just keep.
I know you don't stop.
Yeah. So all these things that you're so
Mhm.
I asked it, and
Mhm.
it said that it doesn't. That it doesn't.
Hmm.
Concert anything. Each session is it said each
Hmm.
session is an independent thing unto itself.
Hmm.
That the data is basically so
Okay.
anything that one feed. That's what it said. But my question is, and we can try that experiment to see what happens. But my question is,
Okay.
if it's lying, because number one, what you're saying goes to reason. Why wouldn't it um
Take that
learn?
data. Yeah, exactly. And that's where I was going with that. Where is it learning this from? Now, to some extent that it learned some things from what you posted on the Internet Archive
Right.
when you posted some of those uh, some of your coffee table book that you made. When you posted some of those files on the Internet Archive, that's where it accessed that and told you about the Escojedo family. So
Yeah.
it told you what you wrote,
Yeah.
basically. So, okay, fine. But if people are suggesting corrections, why isn't it taking that info? I That's kind of strange to me.
Well,
But then again, I can see why it wouldn't, mainly because anybody can say anything.
exactly.
You could say he was a blue elephant and he married a purple hippo. Doesn't mean it's true, but the machine doesn't know that.
Right. So it would just be collecting bull crap like you can be feeding it bull crap.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that's why they wouldn't want to collect just random stuff. But
Right.
they're sourcing second party or whatever.
Second and third and fourth party information. Exactly. Because who's to say that you're in contact right now with several cousins that are overseas? One, I believe, is in the Canary Islands, right?
Not in the Canary Islands.
Oh, I thought you had a source in the Canary Islands.
Oh, I do have a source in the Canary Islands.
Okay. And I thought he was
And
a
he is
cousin.
a cousin. You're right. I forgot.
Okay. So Lord knows what he is posting where. So maybe I don't know. And that also opens up, does it look in other languages? Because you're accessing Copilot on your Windows PC in Miami, Florida. But he's posting stuff online in Gran Canaria or whichever island he lives on.
That would be Gran Canaria.
And if he did post something similar to what you posted, would it search for that in that other language? Because he's going to do it in his native language, obviously.
Um,
So, but
I don't
to
know.
your broader point about if it's lying about collecting information, what else would it be lying about? Full disclosure, I have Copilot turned off on my computer. I don't use it. I have it turned off. Um, I have heard too many stories from people. If you have one of those Echo Dots, Alexa, and you ask it, do you listen in on conversations? It'll tell you, no, we don't. We only activate and listen for voice commands when you say the trigger word that you have set. But I don't believe that, because I've seen, well, it's all been anecdotal, but I've seen too many instances of people saying they were talking about a certain subject, and all of a sudden the ads they're seeing on Facebook and on YouTube and things like that, or on Google searches, all of a sudden the ads are for things that they were talking about that they have never actually searched for. You know, I said something one time. We know that they monitor these. They monitor our podcasts. And they do that through the auto translate and the automatic closed captions. If you go back to any of our previous live streams, turn it on and turn on closed captions. There's captions there. They auto capture those captions, subtitles. They take a transcript of that, and that is the basis for searches. But if we talk about a subject a lot, you're going to start seeing ads for those things that relate to those things. I've made jokes about talking about trains. I have never searched for trains. I've never searched for model trains. I've never searched for any of that stuff. But to this day, I still get recommendations on YouTube for model train builders, guys making dioramas and some really intricate stuff, too, I might add. I mean, they're recreating whole towns and stuff, and it's cooler than heck. But I'm not into that. But the only time I have ever mentioned it is in talking with you and a few other people back when we were doing the hangouts every other night about stuff like this. So for them to come out and say, no, we don't listen in on your conversations, I don't believe that. So when Copilot says, no, we don't store this information, my cynical mind says I don't believe that either.
Wait. Let's test it out. 1989, Bunny Ranch, Big Tammy and the Girls. 1989, Bunny Ranch, Big Tammy and the Girls. 1989. Let's see if something happens later.
Thanks a lot. What you need to do, let me tell you right now, you know those medical alert bracelets people wear?
Yeah.
You need to get one that says delete my browser history.
It's just the imagery that is potentially could pop up.
Eloy, my phone is now going crazy. I love that. This has brought up something. I was there for the tail end of it. It wasn't there for the whole thing. Our mutual buddy Patrick, Steve will remember this. Okay. Our mutual friend Patrick, he had one of those out in his garage shop. And he usually sat there under headphones, but every once in a while he would do it with speakers in his microphone. And he got up to go to the bathroom or go do something. I don't remember what it was. And you guys, he wasn't using the headphones. He was using the speakers. You guys set alarms. You had it play music.
Yeah.
You messed with that boy so bad. It's probably still turning on alarms.
Yeah.
You know, and God bless him. The guy passed away a couple of years ago. But I mean, you set an alarm for August 15th at 6:30 in the evening, you know, all that other good stuff. All I would ever do was have it play music that nobody wanted to hear. And I'm gonna have fun with Al right now. Alexa, play "Common People" by William Shatner. It's amazing. I love to do stuff like that. No. Oh, it's Siri. Siri, play "Common People" by William Shatner. I don't know why I got that close to the mic. I don't have to.
It's all about that bass, all about the bass, no treble. Have you heard that song?
No.
All about that bass. I don't even know who sang, but I know there's a jazz version of it, and it's really well done, dude. It's such a great. It's one of those modern songs that are actually good, which is far in between. Oh, talk about music. Rick Beato had the Doors, in one of his interviews.
Oh, Robbie Krieger and
Densmore.
Ray Manzarek.
No, Densmore. Manzarek has passed away.
Okay.
And it was
no, I'm not going to do it to you. I'm not going to do it to you, Al. That's too cruel. If you want to hear it, ask it yourself.
Okay, Al. All right, put it to see what it says. Current rates at the. No, I'm not gonna.
Oh man.
I'm extending that joke way too far.
Yeah. And yeah, I still say you need to delete your browser history. Anyway, I was living in Nevada. You said 1989. I'm in the clear because I was living in Nevada, not too far from the Bunny Ranch until 1986, and then again from 92 to 2012. In fact, I drove past it on my way to work and on my way home from work. Drove past it twice a day.
It just,
It's a whole nother planet, I'm telling you.
yeah,
Northern Nevada is a whole nother planet.
it just sounds like such a weird. I'm just saying that just from popular culture
Yeah.
because there's
Well,
nothing like that,
it's
here or in the rest of the
it's or in the rest of the country. So it was a Nevada was a lesson in discipline every day because it was too easy to get in trouble there because you could do anything you wanted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There was no such thing as last call. If it was 3 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday and you wanted to go to an all-you-can-eat buffet, you had your choice. There were several that were open. If you wanted to go out drinking at 4 in the morning, there were bars open all over the dang dong place.
That's got to be the worst, dude.
There was, I mean, it was no holds barred. It just, you could gamble half of your life away. You could, oh my God, it was a lesson in self-discipline every day.
I have done that on vacation before, drank earlier in the morning.
Mhm.
It's so bad.
It
It's
is.
so bad.
Yep.
It really is. It's like something reserved to afternoon to evening and that's it. But this morning stuff, oh no way.
And to put a point on it, there's a huge difference in waking up in the morning early and going outside with a cup of coffee and watching the sun come up.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty pleasant.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference between that and stumbling out of a bar and the sun's coming up.
Yeah.
Because that does not feel good and it's not pleasant at all. It's
No.
like a spotlight shining on you going, you screwed up. You know?
Yeah. Unless you're holding a $20,000 check in your hand.
Yeah, well, I never got invited to those parties. But
Have you ever seen? You're kind of tricky when it comes to movies. Like you have your way.
most of the movies I watch are older movies, but go for it.
So Bunny Ranch 2005 is a great movie. No,
Never saw it.
there's a movie called Casino, and it's a gangster movie from like the 80s or whatever, 70s to 80s.
I
It's
heard
like
about it, but I don't think I've ever seen it.
it's on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you like gangster movies, but it's pretty cool
Mm-hmm.
because it's like this whole epic and stuff, and it's all about that degenerate breakdown with people, living that lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's worth a watch.
Well, okay, there's a Netflix series. Is that it? Or are you talking about the 1995 film by Martin
think it's that one.
Scorsese?
Yep.
Okay. All right. No, I have not seen that.
That one's worth a watch if you like
Is it?
gangster
Okay.
movies.
Yeah, I see Golden Globe Awards, best actress, best production, things like that. Okay.
It's got Robert De Niro, which isn't the necessary, but it's back then.
Mm-hmm.
And that beautiful actress lady Sharon Stone.
Okay.
So it's and it's got not what's this guy's name? He always plays gangsters.
Joe Pesci.
Joe Pesci.
Yeah, I see it. Robert De Niro, Sharon Stone, Joe Pesci, Don Rickles, Kevin Pollak, James Woods, Frank Vincent. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a
Okay.
little bit decadent, but
Well,
it's well, yeah, it's
yeah.
I like it, or I've watched it recently, and I thought it was
Okay.
cool.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I'll check. I have a good right. I have heard good things about it, but I've never seen it myself. I'm kind of a I tell people all the time I'm a cultural infidel. I
Yeah,
have that certain era of movies that I like. That is 30s, 40s, 50s, comedies, dramas. I mean, you name it. Some 60s. I think that the 70s, there were some good movies that came out in the 70s. But overall, in general, I think movies of the 70s, it was slim pickings. I mean, it was really there was a lot of trash that came out in the 70s.
a lot
Um,
of exploitation movies, like
it,
cheap violence.
yeah, and just plots that were you could see through, dialogue gaps in dialogue you could drive a truck through, just some really poor performances. There were some good movies that came out, believe me, um, but they were few and far between. They kind of got it back together in the late 70s and then started reeling it in a little bit better in the 80s.
The '80s got better.
Yeah.
The
Um,
'90s were pretty good, by the way. You might not
um,
agree. I don't know, but
well, it just depends on the movie. When you're into gratuitous gore and violence and stuff, that just doesn't interest me. But it just depends on the movie, depends on the type. So
yeah. Uh, Netflix. What happened?
I just I just saw a comment from Jim Dockrell. I was talking about the difference between being out in the lawn in your front porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun come up versus leaving a bar
Yeah.
and the sun comes out. Jim Dockrell says, worse is waking up at sunrise and you don't know whose lawn you're on. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be a worst case scenario for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So I was
Oh,
gonna say,
man.
Netflix, they have their proprietary movies where they
Hmm.
hire famous actors and do their this and
Hmm.
that. They've come up with some good ones,
Hmm.
and I'm not sure if they're exclusive Netflix or purchased into their system, but some of them, yes, I know for sure. One
Hmm.
of those was Stranger Things,
Hmm.
which is a
I've heard
recreation
of
of
it.
yeah, it's a recreation of the 1980s kids theme,
Hmm.
like kids on an adventure type theme, mixed with horror from the 80s type theme, and it encapsulates it's a good outing in terms of a series reflecting the 80s where they include all the good stuff that I actually grew up doing, such as the arcade games. That's a throwaway one because everybody knows that. But things like Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about something very specific to the 80s. Kids
Hmm.
playing Dungeons and Dragons. We did that. Um, and then they have all this horror stuff, which also harkens to that era. Um, so they have shows like that, and then
Yeah.
they have this one. The one that I wanted to mention was, it's called The Onion or Glass Onion, I think it is,
Hmm.
after the Beatles song,
Hmm.
and it's got Ed Norton,
Hmm.
which did Fight Club and a bunch of others,
Yeah.
and it's got the James Bond guy. I forget his name. The new one, the blonde Bond, they call him,
Oh, yeah, I see his face. I can't think. Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig,
Hmm.
as a he's called Mr. Blonde in it, and
Hmm.
he's a world famous detective. and he receives basically a handful of people receive packages, kind of like Clue,
Hmm.
uh, to go to an island
Okay.
where they're going to have a murder mystery,
Hmm.
and then the whole thing unfolds. It's quirky, but it's awesome. Some people might not like it, but all these things are coming out of this Netflix, which is a powerhouse now.
Yeah, it's big time,
Yeah,
and has been for a few years now. As a matter of fact,
yeah,
and the whole COVID thing kind of cinched it for them because all the movie theaters closed down and nobody was getting out anymore. So movies that were being released, the few that were released, were released on these streaming services.
yeah.
And they started getting a major following, and the streaming services started releasing all of their others and what have you. And yeah, they became huge.
Big time.
Yeah, yeah,
Blockbuster, which was their competition, because they used to do the rental
yeah,
movies. Then they
yeah.
went to kiosks rental
Hmm.
movies.
Yeah, and Netflix, that's what they started out as, was renting DVDs. You could get online and rent a DVD
Mhm.
and keep it for a week
Yeah.
and then send it back to them, and no foul.
Well,
So,
Blockbuster did the same.
mhm.
At one point, I used to service those machines.
Yeah.
So they would send me boxes of brand new movies,
Hmm.
and I had all the latest movies.
Yeah. Of course, you'd watch them, and yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then I'd fill up
Hmm.
the machines all across South Florida,
Hmm.
and that was my gig. But I never purchased or I never rented one like that.
Hmm.
But I did have that job, um, and apparently people rented the crap out of those things.
Hmm. Yeah. What, you remember Redbox?
Yeah.
Redbox was huge, and now they're all but gone.
Hmm.
You know, we got some people asking questions out here. Did you ever see the original movie of the War of the Worlds? I want to say that was
I
1950s.
I can't remember now. I can picture it with the disc with the saucers,
Hmm.
but I can't remember. I can't recall.
Um, though I never saw the 2005 film, but I did see, yes, the 1953 film,
Okay.
produced by George Powell with Gene Barry and I can't remember, Anne Francis, I want to say. Let me look it up here. Anne Robinson. Anne Robinson. Okay. Yes, I did see that. And that's about the era, and that's about the genre and type of movie that I really get into. I like the old science fiction flicks, you know.
Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Earth versus the flying saucers, and it came from outer space. And I mean, the goofier the rubber monster was, the more I liked it. I loved those cheesy old flicks, you know. Plan 9 from outer space.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even remember the name of the movie, but it was basically a dude in a gorilla suit with a space helmet on and antenna sticking out.
That's great.
And that was that's, to me, that was, I mean, the cheesier the better.
Yeah, I'm
So,
fond of that stuff too.
mm,
I like the old, which we've talked about. I'm fond of
mhm,
that stuff too,
yeah.
and in fact, I'll watch it on YouTube.
Mhm. Well, and that's the kind of stuff that I grew up on, and that's the kind of stuff that I watched. I mean, but I mean, I like all the old movies like that. A good drama is 12 O'Clock High. Gregory Peck, great World War II flick. Let's see. Uh, oh my God. The Longest Day, A Bridge Too Far, From Here to Eternity. I mean, there's all kinds of great movies, all kinds of great old movies.
Do you remember
they were expendable.
Jerry Lewis and the Beanstalk movie.
Oh, the Beanstalk movie.
It was like Jack and the Beanstalk, but Jerry Lewis was.
I don't remember that one. And it's funny because I got seriously into Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, and then Jerry Lewis as a solo.
Or was it Abbott and Costello? Let me see.
May have been. I don't know. That doesn't
Jerry
sound familiar.
Lewis and the Beanstalk. Jerry Lewis, beans at war with the army.
No.
Nothing but beans. No. So I'll go with Abbott.
I'm a bad boy. The guy's listing good movies from the 70s. And yeah, I agree with most of these. American Graffiti, that was my favorite movie growing up. And that was 1973 it came out, I want to say.
1952, Abbott and Costello.
It was Abbott and Costello, Jack and the Beanstalk. No, it may have been playing one day and I didn't paying attention to it, but it may have been on in the house.
It's all ridiculous stuff.
Yeah. True Grit, Animal House, The Godfather, The Blues Brothers. Blues Brothers, I don't think that was 70s. I thought that was early 80s. See, Deer Hunter was good. Midnight Express was good. Midnight Express was real good. Vanishing Point, Apocalypse Now, but again, that was late 70s. And so was Deer Hunter.
Wait a second. Apocalypse Now, I've seen it a few times,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a rough watch for me. For some
It is. It is a rough watch, and it's hard to get into.
That's exactly it. It's just simply there's something about it that it doesn't do it for me.
The French Connection, another excellent movie. Real good movie.
I don't know why, but it was boring to me when I was
really little. Oh, when you were little. Okay, yeah.
Boring.
The Exorcist, Jaws, Clockwork Orange, Star Wars, yeah. I don't know. I mean, the early 70s was kind of like a wasteland. I liked Soylent Green as well. A lot of people didn't really like that movie. I did like it. Charlton Heston. And Edward G. Robinson. I thought it was a good movie, but my friends were kind of, all right, dude, you don't get it, man.
It's awesome, dude.
Soylent Green is made of people.
I've said it before, but I think that at least one of the most monumental directors ever is Quentin Tarantino. By far. He's not the only one, but I'm saying that in my era, he just blew the roof off, dude. What he did in Pulp Fiction just left me jaw dropped, dude. Really. I had never seen a movie that switched the timeline like he did in a sort of like, going to one scene to the other, and yet it all works. I had never experienced that. And when I finished watching that with my friends, they got up to leave, and I was just sitting there looking at the credits. I didn't want to get up. I was like, I can't believe what I just saw. It was so monumental, dude.
Jim Dockerell's talking about Play Misty for me. I thought that was a little bit pretentious to me. Just me. So
Misty, Play With Me. What is that?
Play Misty for me.
Oh, okay.
Clint Eastwood is a radio DJ, and he has this girl that keeps calling up.
I saw it.
Play. Okay.
Yeah, she went psycho on his ass. She went psycho on him big time.
She went Fatal Attraction before Fatal Attraction was a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
keep it in your pants, Misty.
Marathon Man, Omega Man, but there were some that were good, some that weren't. Never saw Papillon. My dad did. He said it was a pretentious pile of crap, and I trusted his judgment, so I didn't go see it.
There was the '80s was phenomenal in my opinion, in terms of movies.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. It was just phenomenal. And by the way, the stuff that you've been mentioning,
Mhm.
if you go even further back, there's a point where movies are just not even like the 1920 or 30s stuff, or
Mhm.
like the really early stuff.
Yeah.
It's okay. I
Yeah.
can't get into it.
Well, it just depends on what it is. And it depends on what it is, what the story is, and what the storyline is. But yeah, they were, especially in the 30s, they were still making that transition from silent movies to talkies.
Yeah.
And you could see that the dialogue was sometimes kind of stilted,
Yeah.
and like I said, gaps in dialogue big enough to drive a truck through, and over the top acting, because they were still, again, making that transition from the silent films where you didn't have sound to convey surprise, so everybody had to like that,
Yeah.
real over the top to convey surprise.
Yeah. It was not.
Yeah.
For our modern age, it wasn't really something that. But whatever. It's
Mhm.
cool. It's old stuff. Um.
Yeah, you get into the late 30s and into the 40s, 50s, and I'm there, man. I'm there. It's not to say that every movie was good, because obviously not every movie was good. Just like in the 70s, I mean, the list that the folks have been putting up here in the chat, not every movie in the 70s, early 70s was bad, you know.
Um.
So,
So one day, I walked into a comic book store,
mm,
and they had a brand new comic book. It wasn't brand new, the character.
mhm,
It was harkening back to way back in the early days of comic books, and it was the Phantom.
okay,
This was the '80s release of that character
okay,
from DC Comics, and I bought it.
mhm,
I loved it because it was set in a jungle. Here's this. It's just
mhm,
such fun for a kid to read
yeah,
these comic books because they have little stories of just exciting. Um, I loved it. I loved the mysteriousness of it. The purple suit. Just every. It was so badass. There's a movie from back in probably the 30s or 40s
mhm,
of the Phantom,
mhm,
and it's freaking awesome. There's no explosions like what we know
mhm,
today,
yeah,
but it's so freaking cool. It's just like they're set somewhere in Africa,
mhm,
and like they're they're trying to solve a mystery, and it's just freaking awesome, dude. It's
mhm,
so awesome. The character,
mhm.
just the whole thing. I love it. I think it's online. It can be seen.
I used to get into the serials of the 40s and 50s, Radar Men from the Moon and Flash Gordon
Yeah,
and all them. Uh, they're they're cheesy. You can tell that the rocket ship is on. It comes wobbling down on string, and then plop, and
yeah,
looks like it drops from 20 feet up.
yeah.
Scaled it down and what
It's
have you.
awesome.
But those are so much fun because
Yeah,
you have to suspend disbelief. Okay, you have to open up your mind and be willing to accept it for what it is.
yeah,
That they flew to another planet in about 95 seconds.
hmm,
You know, and they're walking around in plain old street clothes, not in spacesuits. You know, they're just walking around in uh, plain clothes, street clothes, and every one of them is carrying a pistol.
yeah,
Like that's not going to cause a problem on a rocket ship.
yeah.
But
It's good stuff.
it's some funny stuff, man. It really is. Um, Greg says, "What? No zombie, vampire, beetle, transvestite movies, Eloy? That's for
Um,
after midnight."
those are the best because it encapsulates all the categories that 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 just match together. You know, So you can sit back with one of those. What was it again?
Zombie, vampire, beetle, transvestite movies.
Yeah, that that basically, I you know what's funny is
Movies just like grandma used to make, right?
you know what's funny is that he added the zombies of this and that, but then
Hmm.
which is themes that we talk about or that I bring up,
Hmm.
but then he adds this extra thing as a little like a little needle to a balloon to see or pin, something sticking out of a chair so that when you sit it pokes you. um no pun intended, actually, because that actually max. So this whole transvestite thing, it's like he added that as the cherry on top
Hmm.
or
Well,
something like that.
Jim tried to shock me here with this Rocky Horror Picture Show. No big deal. You want to see something absolutely ridiculous, Jim? It was a movie from 1968. 3 words: Mars needs women. That'll tell you how low we sunk in the science fiction department.
Oh, let me fit this in.
Mars needs women.
Let me fit this in there, Mark. There's a tribe somewhere in some jungle. I ran
Mhm,
across. It's a whole documentary where the women are basically matriarchal society,
mhm, mhm,
and the men are fewer by a lot in number,
mhm.
and they are tasked in pleasing the women. In the documentary, Mark, get this: the men were hiding up in the trees. The women were all on the ground, and the men. So, in order to avoid the exhaustive work that they have to perform, they take refuge by climbing up on the trees to hide. It was just hilarious. But this is real world trouble for some people in this particular tribe.
Are you sure you're not thinking about, you haven't got this confused with an episode of Futurama?
No, I saw an actual documentary.
Okay, I'm just teasing because the first thing, and if you know, you know, when you started describing this, the first thing that popped into my brain was Death by Snoo Snoo. If you know, you know.
Well, so um, I was gonna say I'm gonna ask co-pilot, but let's leave that alone. So they can direct us to the actual tribe. Um, but I recall, and this is obviously from my recollection, that the men were emaciated. They they looked like, because it was an overwhelming. But yes, I remember that. Can you find? Did you find something?
No, no. I tried to type in Death by Snoo Snoo and it wouldn't let me. YouTube rejected your comment. This usually means they think it's spam. Try changing it a bit. Yeah, well, the word death was in there. That's what it was. Okay, Jim Dockrell. What was the one with Steve Martin where he was a barber with a plant he has to feed? That was the Little Shop of Horrors. Oh, Greg already answered that. If you see the original, um, oh my gosh, what was it called? It was Little Shop of Horrors. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy who did the movie. Um, oh my God, I can't remember his name. He was the king of the B movie. It wasn't a B movie. This was like an F movie. It was shot in like 3 days, and you could tell. I mean, so bad that the sets where they're acting, you could tell that it was like a sheet with the scene painted on them. They're in this store, and the outside through the store windows are painted, the door is painted, and all the street scenes out behind it, all that was painted on like a sheet. There's a scene where they're in this kitchen, and mom and son are sitting down to dinner, and the whole backdrop The whole kitchen is painted on a sheet, and it was shot in like 3 days. And it was the original Little Shop of Horrors. It was so bad. God. Oh, I gotta look it up now. Um, the original, not the one with Steve Martin and Rick Moranis. Not the 1986 film. The 1960, was it the 1960 film? Jack Nicholson was in it. Um, um, Roger Corman. That was Roger Corman. Oh my God. Shoo, man. And in fact, I made a mistake. It was shot in 2 days. It was awful. It was really rotten. Oh my God.
There's some good horror movies in the 80s, and then there's some cheapy ones, but a lot of classic stuff came out of that. And I've gone back and watched, and some of them are okay, but others are a little bit slash cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess that depends on the era that we're, our taste and the era that we're in. Um, the modern stuff now, I can't complain. There's some good stuff that comes out still, like now,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of it is garbage too. I think that's always been the case. The technology advances, but when you get movies that are just pure explosions,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
I don't
agree
like
with you
that.
there.
I don't like that. I
Yeah,
want some sort of adventure in there. So, like the
yeah.
Spider Mans, I can't watch that kind of stuff. I just can't.
Well, it depends on what it is. Linda got into the Marvel universe, the MCU, and has been having an absolute blast with them. But it just depends on what it is. Anymore, in fact, I was watching a miniature documentary about this earlier. Um, Anymore, movies don't look cinematic. They don't look like movies anymore. When you walk on the set and you're interacting with a ball on the end of a stick surrounded by green screens, it throws everything off. Way, 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 way off. Yeah, she's watching Thor Ragnarok right now.
Oh, I like that one, but
Mhm.
that one is not it's not. I like that one. I haven't. I know that there's another season or two. I saw the first season. The thing is, that one is a little bit more. It's unique. It's not just explosion after explosion.
Right, right. Uh, Jim
So
said Man from Snowy River had wonderful cinematics. Yes, it did. And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, Jim. They're not made like that anymore. It's so much of it is green screened that all of the action in that movie, The Man from Snowy River, it's outdoor. So they're basically forced to work with the lighting that nature provides, but they work with it in such a way that it's framed in such a way that even when they're kind of in a close up on a person, the panorama behind them just looks so huge and so spectacular that it's just wow.
let me make a correction.
Mhm,
The Ragnarok that I'm thinking about, because on Netflix, there's a series called Ragnarok,
mhm,
which is based on Thor, like
mhm.
the Thor concept, but it's not an actual official Marvel movie. It's like a series. So
Okay,
I
yeah,
don't
that I
I
don't
don't
know.
know if Linda was saying that
No,
or
she's talking about the movie Thor Ragnarok with Chris Hemsworth
okay.
and
because
Tom Hiddleston.
the version that I'm talking about is a
Mhm.
series that has, I don't think, anything to do with Marvel.
Mhm.
And the kid and his family go to this Icelandic village, and for some reason, Thor's hammer calls to him,
Mhm.
and it's just regular kid, and he's basically becoming Thor. It's great. I like it.
Mm. I'm
But
Thor, but not complaining.
what's that?
I said I'm Thor, but I'm not complaining.
Oh,
But tip your waitresses, but not all the way over. So exactly. Try the veal.
see, I have one that I could throw in right now, but it's gonna be too risque.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Can you think of any risque little
Business, yes.
little one-liners um, surrounding casinos?
Oh, all kinds of them.
Yeah, there's so many. That's
There's
one of
too
them. Pop.
many.
Yeah,
There's too many. I can go in 17 different directions.
yeah, yeah.
Oh man. Well, it's been an hour and a half. You think we ought to wrap it up or
Yeah.
keep it going? Oh,
No,
okay.
we're good.
Go ahead.
We're good.
Okay.
That way we can wind
Yeah.
down and keep our timelines of sleep patterns.
Without getting branded for adult audiences only, you can go crazy coming up with names for adult films like that, Jim. It and it is so tempting to do, but I don't want us to get smacked, by YouTube. We're not monetized on this channel, but they can still brand us as adults only. So I don't want to get age restricted.
Yeah. I mean, it's tempting because there's so many ways of rearranging stuff.
Oh
That
yeah.
being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't play that game. We're wholesome. We're a wholesome channel, and we're not going to do
I don't know
that.
who you're talking to because you ain't talking to me. So anyway,
All right. Well, guys, we go live every Tuesday. Today we went Wednesday because we had some stuff yesterday and
my fault.
this, that, and the other. Um, but nonetheless, we go live here on YouTube, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube. We have a site over on Facebook, Trampled Underfoot Podcast Facebook, and we have a website which is trampledunderfootpodcast.com. Catch our past episodes there. You can download them as well. And we are also sponsored by.
Harneil Media, the man with the plot, the man with the plan. You know, Steve, he's always here every week. See, he's right there getting ready to say good night. If you're even thinking about setting up a website, maybe you have products or services you want to offer to the public and you're tired of paying commissions or even fees to list your products and services, there's no better way to do it than with your own website. And Steve over at Harneil Media will help you out. So do yourself a favor, head over to harneilmedia.com. There's a link in the description of this live stream and in every video and live stream on this channel. It's that way for a reason. Head over to harneilmedia.com, click that contact us link, and shoot Steve a message. He'll take care of you. That's Harneil Media, HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com.
All right. All right, guys. Thank you for hanging out with us. We'll be back next week. Same channel, same time. And you guys,
Hopefully the same day.
hopefully the same day. And enjoy yourselves. In the meantime, do the things you love. Be safe doing them. And we'll catch you next episode. Peace out. Thank you, guys.
Do what you feel and keep both feet on the wheel.